been, let's see, pretty long sitting here. I know it's almost 4 hours, I think. We have Sheriff Sposato here, and he'll introduce those from the Correction Officers Department. And who do we have, Sheriff?
With me is Sheriff Michael Sposato. With me is Captain Mike Golio from my office. Narda Hall is my budget director, and from the county attorney's office is Connell Denyon.
Thank you. All right. So you have a presentation for us? You're not going to do
just a few points.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Presiding Officer Gonzalez and Minority Leader Abrams and county legislators, thank you for providing me with the opportunity to appear before you today. Based upon my review and analysis of the budget, I am confident that the Sheriff's Department will finish the year under its allotted budget for 2016, and that the 2017 budget is both realistic and achievable. Our internal statistics and ongoing monitoring suggest that we should not see any significant increase in inmate population or inmate length of stay at the facility, so we should remain relatively consistent from an operations standpoint. I have also been informed that we should be appointing a class of 15 to 20 correction officers by December of this year, and we'll be appointing an additional class of 15 to 20 by the second quarter of 2017. Finally, based upon the information submitted to date and pending the final contract with the new inmate health services vendor, I anticipate that there will be minimal, if any, impact on our 2017 budget for inmate health care services. I will now attempt to answer your questions about this year's budget or my proposed budget for 2017.
Legislator Dunn. Legislator Dunn.
It's almost good evening, but good afternoon. Just a couple of quick questions. The medical care at the facility is being addressed, and would you bring us up to snuff on what's going on with that?
Basically, right now we have, there was a vendor chosen, and now we have to, I'll let Connell Denyon speak on what's happening next, but we approved a vendor, and now it's a contract process now. So Connell, you want to speak on what's happens next?
Certainly. Thank you, Sheriff. As the Sheriff said, there's been a vendor chosen, and now we're entering into the negotiation phase of the contract. The vendor was chosen pursuant to the normal RFP process for personal services contract. And we expect that, or hope that that contract would be presented to the legislature for approval and then to NIFA by the end of the year.
By the end of the year, okay. Okay, thank you so much. The equipment, I understand that, are we up to snuff on the equipment for the correctional officers? I know that there's quite a bit of equipment that was needed, and there's right now, you got new uniforms, but the hats didn't come in yet, and there's jackets that haven't come in yet, and has everything
We ordered, we followed the police department model on the uniforms. We went to an on-the-shelf model. So basically, we gave every correction officer 3 uniforms. We have about 4,000 pants and 5,000 shirts. So we did that. We ordered vests. We pretty much went through everyone that is on an outside post or goes out to a hospital. We ordered 200 vests. We used actually the police department grant for that. That's out. We ordered 8 metal detectors. We have all 8 came in, 6 are in the service now. We have to just put the last 2, some hand scanners. As far as the hats and the shirts, I'll get back to you on that. I don't have that information. And the jackets.
Yeah. Now, training it. Now, when the federal government was at the jail, they used to mandate 5 days of training, and now it's cut down to 2. Is that?
Yeah, we did that about 6 years ago, at least. When the Department of Justice came in, we upgrade. We were doing 2 days. We went to 5 days based on them because there was a lot of specific specialty training that we had to do. I think it was about 6 years ago that I reduced it back down to 2 days. So basically right now I'm doing what's training mandated by the state. That's pretty much all I'm doing right now.
So state mandated?
All the state mandated training.
2 days?
2 days.
All right, now the CERT team. There used to be 70 guys on the CERT team, and now there's, what, 17?
No, I think there's about 35 on it. We've posted for it. It's something that we're working on because I'm sure if you haven't spoke to Brian Sullivan, he's here. We have worked out some arrangements that he's asked to put on a full-time CERT team. So we've put out applications for, I think we got 80 applicants in. They have to do like an obstacle course test that we haven't started yet, and that will be filling in the CERT positions.
Okay, and that will be how long?
I can't tell you exact date when we're doing it, but
Roughly.
I would say sometime next year. I just can't give you a date because I don't even know how. First of all, they have 80 people. I don't know how it works with the CERT guys will actually do the test, and then we have to go through all the applications. So I just can't tell you a definite date
Will it be
yet.
sooner, as soon as possible, or?
Soon as we can get it done.
Okay, it's not going to be put off.
No.
Okay, so that's supposed to be safety, right?
Yes.
Okay. I know that, the jail sits in our community, so I'm going to let our oh, you're good. Okay. Well, then, you know what? Okay. You know what? Let's open it up, because
Ford had a question or two. I may have a question for you. And it has to be simple, though.
Feel free to jump in. Okay. Thank you very much for your presentation. Just go back to the medical provider.
Sure.
You say that you have somebody new in place now that will be starting. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. The new medical provider. Correct? You have somebody that.
We've addressed, the committee met, they made a recommendation, went to the county executive, we selected a vendor, and now we have to start the process to do a contract.
All right, and one of the issues, it seems, that with Armor, amongst many issues, but I guess one of the things that I found out was that you were not doing, I guess, these performance evaluations. What steps have you now instituted so that with the new provider, that you will be doing all of these checkups so that we can make sure that they are adhering to the standards and providing the necessary care both for the inmates as well as the.
Well, we did a couple of things. We have basically an acting health contract monitor that's there now monitoring that stuff. We're doing applications now. We've been interviewing for a full-time health contract monitor. There was a recommendation made from the Attorney General on a place called Coaches, who's at the jail now, and they're monitoring Armor. Plus, they're also going to be monitoring helping out with the new contract, plus monitoring Armor, and they will stay to monitor part of the new contract.
And what changes do you think that you would request with this new provider, considering the fact that, so many inmates ended up dying under Armor's care? And, I know that, just to find out, is there a better way of finding out, if somebody had a pre-existing health condition or something that would impact their care being in the jail?
I think all those issues are going to be addressed in the new contract. Be premature to talk about anything specific. Obviously, it's a top big concern of the department, and will be part of the negotiations and required performance indicators in the contract.
Okay, and then I think you also had an RN that was there that person will stay in place at the jail?
We have the health contract monitor that has been there from the Department of Health is going to stay until I can hire a full-time one, which with Human Resources, we've been interviewing some candidates. So far, we haven't chosen one yet, but once they come on full-time, that will relieve her and we'll take over that.
Okay. And then just going back to what Legislator Dunn had asked about, with the uniforms and everything. I understand you saying you don't know, the processing, the order processing and whatever, trying to get everything. What is, basically the longest time that it's going to take? I mean, if you already have it in place, how long will it take for a correction officer to be able to get the uniform that he or she needs?
No, I just wasn't briefed before I came on knowing about the hats and the jackets and the shirts. I just can't tell you that answer. As far as the full uniforms, we went from they basically were a gray uniform. Now they're a black uniform. So the hats that we have won't look good. We do have hats. They're just gray. So we're going to get so they don't match. So I just don't want to give you an answer that I don't know. I will go back and get back to you on the process. I can't tell you if they're actually ordered. I don't want to tell you they are if they're not. I just wasn't prepared for that question.
And then here in the budget, you have that the Showa, you were going to have 900 correction officers. You put it down to 890?
Yes.
I'm looking at, yeah. But, so there has been a reduction in the offices?
Yes.
Correct? But yet you're planning on hiring?
Well, right now I have 690, just on the correction officer side, I have 690, and, and we're down to about 800, I think 35 today. So we've hired 64 correction officers in 15 and 16. But we also had 95 leave in 2015. We've had almost 30 or 40 leave this year.
Yeah.
So we don't hire really as fast as, to replace them.
Right.
So I lowered it, but only by 10.
Okay, so you plan on, for 2017, you anticipate that there'll be 890 officers working at the correctional?
I hope. It truly depends on how many I can actually hire. 15 to 20 are going to go on in December, definitely. We'll have another class that's definitely going to go on by the second quarter. We also have attrition. I can't tell you how many people are going to leave between today and December 31st, and how many we're going to leave maybe next year.
Yeah,
but
that
would be my plan.
Yeah. And then I just, with the CSEA, so you're increasing them by 6, right? And that would be basically, those that work in the kitchen and all those jobs, right?
Yeah, we're down a lot between the cooks, the maintenance guys, and clerks. We've tried to hire. We have a lot of people that were disqualified through civil service, so we really need to get them.
Right. So you'll be issuing tests,
No, those are appointments. So we've been getting applications, sending them over to civil service, and trying to get them qualified.
Okay, all right. And then the ordinance employees, you're doubling them from 2 to 4?
Well, I have.
So that would basically be your office?
Yeah, well, I have myself. I have 2 deputy undersheriffs. I have a commissioner of correction, which is part-time now. He's actually out. He broke his ankle. He'll be out 3 months, but he starts full-time in January. So that will be an additional one. That will be the 4 that will be total.
And, no, I think that's it for me. Thank you.
Ask a couple of questions, and the first one is, what's the head count of the trustees or the inmates at the jail at the present time?
I can give you the averages.
I have a reason for asking that, okay? Thank you very much. Well, they sometimes call them trustees, I don't know. So I think they do. They call them.
We've been averaging between 1164 and 1203.
What is it?
Between 1164, and 1203 for the last couple of months.
Okay, has that number fluctuated over the past 2 years?
In 2000, I'll start with 13. We averaged 1,290. In 2014, 1,234. 2015, 1188, and this year we're predicting 1181. So pretty close.
Now, the correction officers, how is that the number of correction officers are sufficient for that number of inmates or trustees? I was told to call them trustees.
Inmates.
Inmates, okay.
We do have trustee inmates that work on different projects outside, but. I'm sorry, what was your question?
I want to know, is the number of correction officers compatible with the number of inmates?
Yeah. I would like a few more correction officers, but I think it is.
Do you need more?
I do.
Oh. That's it. Okay.
Well, I mean, right now.
What's the ratio then?
No, it's not about a ratio. It's different staffing. Every housing area has a specific staffing amount. Then I have ancillary units that have a staffing amount. There's really not a number to say I need exactly this for that because we have a lot of other things that we do. So there's not really a number to say for 5 inmates. I mean, I can tell you in a housing area, we have 52 inmates on each side. That's 3 correction officers and 1 supervisor. But there's not really a set. I mean, in security, the average platoon, we would need, on the midnight tour, just in the jail, we use about 80 correction officers. About 100 on the 4 to 12 tour, 120 on the 8 to 4 tour, but then we have ancillary with transportation and operations. There's just different places that we have correction officers. There's not really, beside the staffing plan basically that the Commissioner of Corrections sets out for inmate housing. That's the only place that I have to have correction officers for the inmates. I have union contracts on different areas, but.
The only reason why I'm asking that question is that the facility is in the heart of a residential community.
Right.
Across the street from a high school. And it's important that we know that the jail is adequately staffed, all right, to meet the needs of not only the correction officers, but the community itself. All right, and this has always been a question that has been raised for the number of years that I've been involved with the jail. Security is extremely important in that facility, all right, and the community needs to be assured that facility is secure, because if it's not, guess what? It will impact on the community outside. So that's the only reason why I wanted to know the ratio between the inmates and the staffing.
Yeah. Basically, though, pretty much almost all of the correction officer positions are post-coverage positions beside the Monday to Friday day jobs. So even if so we backfill them based on post-coverage. So if they're off, we hire them. So we're always fully staffed. We don't ever run
Okay.
not staffed.
That's what I want to hear.
Okay.
Now I'm going to go off that topic. With the privatization of the health plan.
Yes.
Is the county indemnified when lawsuits are brought against the insurer?
Yeah.
It's covered by the existing contract, and we would build that into the new
I
contract.
didn't hear you.
I'm sorry, it is covered by the current contract, and it would be in the new contract as well.
I didn't hear what you said.
The answer is yes.
Okay, so we are indemnified. So,
Yes.
okay, so it's totally the responsibility of the provider.
The vendor.
Correct?
Correct.
Okay, that's all I wanted to ask. Oh, by the way, do we have funding sufficient to accommodate the new provider?
I believe we do.
Okay, that's about it. Now, who else needs to ask a question? Legislator Curran.
Thank you. So, Sheriff, I had emailed you and the controller for the performance measures that allowed him to pay Armor for a couple of months. And he responded to me. He sent a report to me and that I'm distributing to the legislators, and you'll get a copy of as well. And I just wanted to ask you some questions. There's some troubling things in this that I think that should be brought to light. First of all, when you get it, you'll see what I'm talking about. The benchmark for these performance indicators, most of them are at 90% instead of 100%. So the goal for a lot of these is at 100%. Is at 90% instead of 100%. And if I can just pick off some of the ones that are in here, tuberculosis control, for instance, all patients accepting a PPD will be read and have the results documented in the medical record prior to transfer from a new admission housing. Now, to me, the benchmark from this really should be 100% with such a virulently contagious condition. It was met at 100%, so that's good. Another one that's a very simple, basic preventive test for women coming in to get pap smears within 7 days. That was a benchmark that was 90% that wasn't met. It was at 80%. That's, I find, pretty troubling. Patients housed in administrative segregation will receive mental health rounds a minimum of 3 times per week. That was not met either, the 90%. It was only 75%, and to me, that's a real safety concern for inmates and for the people who are in charge of them. And a couple more that I will pick out. Patients will be assessed for suicide potential before being discharged from substance detox treatment. I don't have to tell you, you're an expert in the field, but suicide and substance abuse are a serious problem in any jail, and also not only for human reasons, but for liability reasons. I would think that the goal at least should be 100%. You came close to 97, but I'm surprised that the goal wouldn't be 100%. And then another one is the first one on the list, sick call access to care. So patients will be called within 72 hours of receipt of request. Now, that's 3 days. That's a long time to wait. And that benchmark of 90% wasn't even met. Now, just sort of more globally, this is troubling to me because of what I've said, but also because it's just for 2 months, right? It's just June and July, and we don't know, I don't understand how this could have been paid, $1 million a month, $60 million over 5 years, when these performance indicators weren't known or met. And it's just very surprising to me that that much money, taxpayer money, was paid without something that was contractually obligated being recorded and given to whoever it is that does the paying.
I just thought I'd jump in. I think we're veering off course from the budget discussion here. I think these are performance
I would disagree
issues.
with that because it's money that's being spent for health care. That's budgeted.
I think in the next budget, in the next contract, all of these performance issues are going to be reevaluated. The recommendations of the various oversight bodies, the AG, the consultant, all those are going to be taken into consideration to build into the contract to go forward. So, again, I think we're getting far afield from the preparation that the department has done today.
That's all I have for now.
Anyone else?
Yes.
Legislator Salagas, please.
Good afternoon. How are you doing?
Good, sir.
Great. I'm very concerned here because your presentation was rather brief, yet it ignores the fact that in the past year we've had more than 10 deaths of inmates in your facility and well over 200 correctional officers who have been injured. I mean, why have a budget that remains the same when there's been such important changes and such important events like that? Can you comment on the 200 injuries on correctional officers, including one that happened recently where the defendant was arraigned in the criminal court on Main Street? Can you talk about that?
Well, I don't understand what your question.
I mean, a really simple question. Your budget remains the same, yet in the past year you've had over 10 deaths of inmates and over 200 injuries of correctional officers. Why have a budget that remains the same when obviously you have issues? It begs the question, what's happening at the jail?
Well, here's what I can tell you, basically talking about the budget. So we have 48 correctional officers. I'll talk about not the deaths. I'll talk about the correctional officers. We have 48 correctional officers that are out on the disabled list. 9 of them are pending retirements. Though there was injuries at the jail, and we have less correctional officers, I'm still $4 million under my budget as far as my staffing is concerned. So the reason why I didn't raise my budget is because there was no reason to go higher than I'm coming in this year.
But that $4 million possibly is causing 10 deaths and over 200 injuries of officers.
We're talking about staffing. I mean, the death.
It should be by twice. You're nickel and diming, and as a result, people are dying, and officers are getting injured.
What I'm saying to you is that you're asking me why I didn't change the budget.
Yeah.
As far as the deaths, that's a litigation issue that isn't debt. There's no cost to there's indemnification on that.
You don't think that that possible negligence is due of the
you're asking me if it's changing.
Yeah, I don't think. I mean, it's again a line of questioning that it just doesn't seem fair and as you said, related.
That's a fair question. We have less inmates as you recorded, but we have more injuries upon correctional officers. I'm sure that has something to do with your budget.
I can give you some stats on injuries, just historical injuries. I mean, basically, we're pretty much I'm going to go 14, 15, 16, so you have the numbers. So we'll just go from September. So September of 14, we had 36 correctional officers injured. On 2015, we had 35, and we had 48 to date, in September for 2016. Let's just go to August. 33 in 2014, 28 in 15, 38 in 16. As far as your 200, I'm not sure if you're calculating from January. I didn't calculate the numbers for the whole year, but I can add this up quick.
What plan do you have to reduce that incidence?
We do a lot of things all the time. We don't support anybody getting hurt. There are a lot of inmates fight in the jail, and the officers do a great job responding and breaking up the fight. A lot of the injuries happen because while inmates are fighting, they have to use force. During the force, officers get injured. Really, there's not much to do other than the officers trained well. We have the guys, they do a great job over there, but you can't avoid injuries if they're in fights. There's nothing, if you look at the numbers for 3 years, they're pretty much the same. I mean, they've been consistent. The use of forces have been consistent, the injuries to inmates, and pretty much all the stuff has been the same for the last 3 years.
How do you reduce some of these fights from happening? I mean, to my understanding, and I speak to many of the inmates and also the officers who work there, you have rival gangs living in the same shelters, and as a result of consolidating all these shelters, now you have rival gangs living in the same units, and it caused the possibility of having a fight to be much greater. I mean, have you thought about that?
We have.
Legislator Sullivan, I don't mean to interrupt, but is there a budgetary question involved in there?
These all relate to the budget, every single question.
Well, here's what I can tell you. I mean, listen, we work hard every day. We have a gang unit. Mike Golio here is in charge of it. We move gang members all the time. There's a lot of gang members in jail. There's gang members that we identify when they come in. There's gang members that get recruited once they're in. We can, talk about consolidation. We have housing areas, so we move people at the request of a lot of different correction staff in the jail. When a new inmate comes in, if there's a tattoo, there's things that we do that goes to the gang unit. I have a housing unit that does a great job, and between the housing unit and the gang unit, they rotate inmates around all the time to try to separate the gang members. We have a couple of hundred gang members. It's hard to keep them. You can't put one gang member in one, by itself, and you're going to have to combine people. Now, there's not going to stop fighting, and not all the fights we have are gang-related.
What's the ratio between officers and the number of inmates that he's overlooking, who's overseeing, he or she is overseeing?
Depends where you are. In the general, we have a linear tier setting, we have pod setting, and we have dorms. So if you're in the pod setting, we have the double-sided. We have one control bubble, which we have a supervisor, which is a corporal, and one officer inside on the 8 to 4 and 4 to 12.
So one is responsible for about eight inmates?
So let me finish the question.
Okay.
So we have a corporal and an officer inside the bubble, and we have an officer inside each pod. So we have a total of 4 staff for 104 inmates in the pod setting. In the linear tiers, we have one officer that patrols. Beside mental health, I'll get to mental health in a second. In the linear tiers, we have 4 tiers. We have an officer that's an A and B patrol guy. There's a patrol guy for 2 tiers. There's a lobby guy, and there's another corporal there. Pretty much, there's a staffing ratio set by the state that this is what you have to have in a housing area, and that's what we do. We don't do less staffing than we have to. That's the ratio.
I understand. The DOJ requires, to my understanding, about 5 days of training. I understand Legislator Dunn asked you questions about the training of these the officers. Can you please go in a bit more detail? Because to my understanding, the training has been reduced to about 2 days of training.
No, there's absolutely no requirement from the Department of Justice for 5 days of mandated training. When the Department of Justice was here, which they're not no more, they asked us to add the training for those specific things. Once the Department of Justice left, I believe they left in 2008, we no longer had to do any more of that. The State Commission of Correction, which is also my oversight, mandates only specific hours of training a year, and that's what I do. I do the mandated hours of training.
So you do the minimum?
I do the mandated. You say minimum, it's called mandated.
So you said 14, 16?
I do 2 days, 16 hours of training.
Okay.
Which is mandated by the state.
Okay. But you described your budget for the past couple of years. Just to be clear, 90 posts have been eliminated in the past 4 or 5 years.
That's based on what?
Again, you described your budget.
No, correction officers that left. Not that 90 posts were reduced. My post cover stays the same every day on every tour.
But in the last 4 or 5 years, Sheriff, have you reduced 90 posts?
No.
That's not correct?
That's not correct.
Boss chairs. Are you familiar with that term?
Yes.
Oh, please describe that.
It's a chair that's basically, instead of walking through a magnetometer, it's a chair you sit in that looks at other areas of your body.
And do you use that tool at your facility?
Yes.
Okay. And you mentioned that 6 new metal detectors have been installed?
Yes.
Okay. When exactly were they installed?
I'll get back to you on the exact dates. They've been installed months ago.
Legislator Sullivan, just please.
Again, I understand, but these are...
It needs to be part of the budget all right? There's no relationship with the budget,
It relates to equipment expenses. My next question is about
Don't go
computers.
then ask the question that
There aren't
relates to
to my
equipment
understanding
expenses.
from officers, there aren't sufficient equipment for transportation. There aren't sufficient equipment for computers. The quality of those computers, again, are old and ancient. I mean, can you please comment on some of these?
I mean, if you could, I would more than happy to look into it for you if you get me the list. I don't know where you're getting that from, but, as far as transportation and computers, but I'd be more than happy to look into if you get me the actual stuff that you want me to look into, and I'll get back to you.
I understand. And again, just to piggyback on some of the questions asked by Legislator Ford, in the transition of a medical provider, what is your plan just to make sure that there is a continued medical care at the facility?
I think he should answer that.
Yes,
During the transition.
We're not hearing you. Speak
During-
up.
to better-
Get it close to the,
During the transition, we've been assured that Armor is going to stay on until the transition is complete with the new vendor.
Okay. And again, the inmate count, to my understanding, is it about the 1,100 range? Is that
It's
correct?
between like 1164 and 1200.
Okay. And my last question is, to what extent does, I guess, one second. To what extent is that number, your record low number of inmates, to what extent is that caused by any changes, or if possible, by the arraignment courts in terms of sending arraignment courts?
oh.
In terms of sending prisoners to your facility?
And again, it's not.
I honestly have not.
Again, I don't see how that relates to the budget, please. All right, go ahead. That is something I would think the district attorney would have to answer, not the sheriff. Okay? That's not, doesn't
Madam
pertain-
Presiding Officer,
I know, I don't want to shut you down.
No. I just want to make sure we're being fair because,
I'm trying to be.
No, I understand, but the commissioner of the department, I mean, he went on for, I would say, at least an hour and change with his
that's not-
presentation.
yeah.
And his presentation some parts had very little to do with the budget that's
What?
before us. The
I-
commissioner, not Mr. Sposato, I'm talking about the commissioner of police. And no one interrupted him, and we went on and let him do his presentation because we thought it was informational. I think
Yes,
I
but
think
he
Legislator
just-
Szilagyi is providing is trying to get answers to his questions, which could be informational to the public. So
Okay, yes,
I don't
but
think we
if
should
it-
cut him
listen,
off. I mean, this is his only
I
opportunity.
believe that the presentation that the Commissioner of Police did make was related to the budget. And you know what? And we gave him an opportunity to address other matters that were not part of his presentation, but they pertain to the budget. Now, I am not trying to shut Legislator Szilagyi down, but I think it's important that if there is a question related to the budget, now as far as why the number of inmates have gone down, there could be any number of reasons for that, Legislator Szilagyi. And I think that the sheriff is not going to skirt that issue. I think he's willing to
answer.
answer it to the best of his ability.
And
okay?
thank you very much, Presiding Officer, and I also want to thank my attorney, Kavan Abrahams. But
Well, he's not an attorney. That's okay.
All I would note is that it's must be getting serious because Mr. Podlazak is right there right now.
Okay.
But the reason why I'm asking that
Let him
question
answer that. He's trying to answer
is
it.
but the reason I'm asking that question is because, the number of inmates at the facility could be influenced by, for example, how they're housed. If they're housed in two facilities as opposed to three, may I please continue? I did not interrupt anyone, did not interrupt you in your discussion. It could be caused by, 500 inmates being housed in two units, and as a result, when the judges visit the jail, they feel that it's overcrowded, and as a result, they issue less bail. So there are reasons why I'm asking these questions. I'm not just pulling them out of the air. I'm truly concerned for the public safety of Nassau County when you have individuals who are on probation, get ROR'd or released without bail, and as a result...
I think if you want to go pursue that line of questioning, you should invite the district attorney and her staff.
I know she's your political rival, but she is not responsible for that. If you know, Mr. Nicola, I'm surprised. You're an attorney. You know the law. The district attorney does not set the bail. The judges do. So please, stop using the political tricks and stick to the law.
It's not the law. Basically, what the issue is, you have questions about the arraignment process. Assistant district attorneys would be the individuals to answer those questions.
That is incorrect. The district attorney does not set the bail. The judge does.
If you also wanted to
The district attorney makes recommendations.
If you also wanted to invite members of the judiciary, you could do that. But to ask Sheriff Sposato those questions is just out of line.
Okay, but you have a response that you think it's apropos to what he's trying to ask you, please do.
We have absolutely no control who comes to jail. It's all done by law. That's it. Zero control.
Thank you.
Okay, Legislator Bino.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Good afternoon.
How you doing?
Oh, good evening. I was
Hey,
just getting ready to correct myself. Good evening. Sheriff, I just want to go back to the document that Legislator Curran supplied this body and also members of your regime over there. So in light of the proposed contract, or the one that's now being negotiated, and in light of the fact that it is alarming to me that if someone says that they're sick, that the benchmark is that we would see them within 72 hours. And the goal is that we would see them within 72 hours, and the benchmark is that we would see 90% of those individuals. And we did fail to meet that number. Based on the fact that we're going to be working with, the new contractor, I think that we need to have a body that would be comprised of health professionals, public health officials, that would look at these benchmarks and be able to assign more appropriate outcomes and indicators for the health and safety of the inmates to which we are responsible for their care. I think that that would be appropriate moving forward. And so I'd like to hear more about how that will play out.
Basically, just the recent hire of the coaches contract, which is a group that we have to monitor what Armor is doing and those benchmarks. And now that we fast-tracked the process and we're going to be starting to negotiate a new contract, they're the ones that I will task to sit down with everyone and make sure that everything that you brought up, Legislator Curran, will be addressed and be better addressed.
Thank you. All right, so I have some other questions.
Sure.
I want to talk a little bit about the Commissioner of Corrections.
Sure.
So he was budgeted as a part-time individual this particular year.
Yes.
And in the coming year, he'll be full-time.
Correct.
I'd like to understand a little bit more about what he will be doing, and I'd like to understand specifically how his role will support the custody and care of our inmates.
Basically, he started off part-time, so I had him working just a couple of days a week, and he was just basically more learning about the staff in the jail and some investigation stuff. Basically, the Commissioner of Correction will oversee all the day-to-day operations at the jail, and starting in January when he comes aboard. So his role basically will be everybody will report to him other than me, and he'll oversee everything.
But specifically, how will he have any kind of, I would like to hear more in more detail, what his role will be in overseeing the health care that is administered for our inmates.
Well, basically, the Commissioner of Correction, I'll make him the Chief Administrative Officer, which is the person that will deal directly with the State Commissioner of Correction on basically, if an inmate files a grievance and it's appealed to the state, that's follow-up is final sign-off would be the Commissioner of Correction. He had broke his ankle. He's probably back in December. Once he's actually back, I will have him included in more of the meetings with the coaches and the new vendor to talk more so he can understand more about the medical. Plus, he just started, so he has to learn more about the day-to-day operations and just the policies I want him to learn more about the State Commissioner of Correction and the policies of the Sheriff's Department. So it's going to take some time, but my eventual goal would be for him to oversee pretty much everything that happens there at the jail.
I remember seeing, I guess, a little bit about his background, but I can't recollect right now, and I'd ask you to maybe expound a little on what his background is in terms of?
He basically, I believe he was about 40 years with the NYPD. His last 18, he was the chief of internal affairs for the for the city police department. And then he left, and then I'm not sure if he was doing some consulting and that, but then that's when I hired him as a part-time, then full-time in January.
Okay, and so the nurse that was assigned to the jail, that I believe came out of the Department of Health.
Yes.
Is that individual still reporting to the jail?
She comes to the jail. She goes to the monthly meetings we have with the healthcare provider. She'll also be reporting to, once we hire the new person, that person will also be, reporting directly to the commissioner.
Okay, because I didn't see anything in the budget that reflected an expense for that particular position.
We didn't put it in the budget because we just didn't have the title yet.
Okay, so even if it were to be an interdepartmental charge to the Department of Health, I think it should be reflected in the budget. I think it's a position that this caucus has lobbied hard and diligently for, and I don't want to see it fall to the wayside by not having the proper resources to support it.
Yeah, I'll pass that over to budget.
Thank you. And in terms of, I believe someone else touched on training, and so I'd like to touch on training as well. The mental health first aid program is a program that my former colleague, Legislator Becker, and I worked to make sure that it was funded and brought to Nassau County. And not only have the community at large been able to benefit from the training, the police commissioner has required that it's part of the training policy for cadets and recruits coming out of the academy. I think that it would be important that not only your recruits receive that training, but I think it would be important that some of the active personnel receive that type of training.
The recruits do it, and I will definitely keep it in consideration for 17's training program when I schedule for next year. This year we're doing already.
For the recruits?
No, the recruits get it. I'm
Right.
talking about the regular in-service training that we were talking about before at the
Right.
Department of Justice. I will go back and consider that for next year for the in-service training for the correctional officers.
I would like that. Can you keep this body abreast as,
I will.
the productivity of that request? The other request that I have, or question that I have, is relative to vocational type activities for the inmates. Is that budgeted for, or do they receive any kind of training or?
We do have inmates with certain work programs, as you saw when you visited the jail. We have inmates who work with our maintenance crew. We have inmates who work with our kitchen crew. We also have certain grant programs. LTI comes into the jail and does some vocational training through our rehabilitation services. Those are paid for through grant monies that we support, and they apply for, and then they come in based on the grant. So we do have programs of that nature.
Okay. Can you give me a itemized list in the body, an itemized list of the grants?
The programs?
The programs and the grants.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you. And then, I have, to that point, is there a mandate by way of the State Department of Corrections that requires that we provide a minimum level of rehabilitation and vocational services?
There isn't, actually.
There isn't?
There is not.
Okay. Okay, so my next question, and before the presiding officer beats me up, this is, it is budgetary. While it's probably a capital budget issue that I think then impacts the operating budget if we haven't considered it in our planning, would be the roof at the jail. When Legislator Curran and I visited the jail, we were troubled by what we saw. It happened to be a stormy, rainy day. We visited on more than one occasion, but the first day that we visited, it was raining, and there was a lot of leaks. And we have followed up to find out where we were with those leaks. And I understood that there was some sort of legal issue involving the contractor. But at this point, I haven't heard that it's been resolved. So I would like to know whether that has been part of your request for your capital improvements. And so, just so you know, I also want to know where we are with the elevators. So,
Sure. Well, on the first one, DPW is involved. There was an issue with the warranty. I think we're still going back and forth with that on the roof, but I will get back to you. I'll inquire this week, and I'll get back to you personally on that. As far as the elevators, we had the one issue with the elevators. We're replacing, I believe, 5 or 6 elevators. They've completed one in the one building, and now they moved over to another lobby, and they're working on that one now. So one's complete, one's in process, and then I believe we have 3 or 4 more to go after that. But it's going from one to one, so it's one company.
okay, and so the roofs, I can't stress it enough.
Yes.
That I think that this is something that is going on way too long.
Yep.
And
I'll try to get
see
back to you
some
by tomorrow if I can
forward
get
movement
the
on it.
answer by tomorrow.
I appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Legislator Kern.
Thank you. My biggest concern is that with this report that I was talking about before, that measures for accountability that were built into the Armor contract weren't met. And it's all about accountability to the taxpayers. And I know you can't always believe what you read in the paper, and I say this as a former reporter. But in today's paper, in Joy Brown's column, the Sheriff's Department employees told Armor it didn't have to release those statistics. Is that true?
Not that listen, not that I can tell you that's true. That I'm aware of. I read it today too, but.
Okay, all right. I mean, I just wanted to clear that up since it was out there. And it's just so, to me, it's so important that these benchmarks that are in these contracts are met because it erodes at public trust in government when they're not. And I would echo Legislator Bino and I think Legislator Ford also that going forward we're done with Armor. That relationship is ending. We're entering into a new relationship, yes. And I would really hope that we are accountable and that we make them accountable right from the start.
We will this time, trust me.
Thank you.
Legislator DeRiggi Whitten.
Thank you,
I have just one
Presiding
question,
Officer.
right?
I do. I'm sticking to it.
One question.
It's almost more of a statement. First of all, Laura, I appreciate you getting this, but I'm a mother of someone with chronic condition, and if you read what it says all patients meeting the criteria for chronic care enrollment will be scheduled and seen by HCPP within 7 days of admission. So that means you can know someone has diabetes or heart issues or anything and you won't see them for 7 days. And then, again, that was only a 90% benchmark, and we only hit 27%. So that means 75% of people coming in with chronic conditions like diabetes, heart disease, all that, were not met within 7 days.
So that performance indicator is speaking specifically to the chronic care registry. All inmates who are admitted into the facility receive a medical screening at the time that they're admitted. There's a history done, they see a doctor, and then they're referred for a chronic care follow-up with the chronic care registry.
Right, but for instance, if there was medication or insulin.
That is all handled during the initial examination by the physician.
I don't know why they have this as a separate criteria.
The chronic care registry, and that's a separate standard under the NCCHC standards, which is where all of these come from, is a separate issue. And that deals with dealing with people in the future that have chronic care. They all have to be seen on the night that they come in. They all have to be provided with the necessary medication on the night that they come in.
So why is it that, I mean, this is glaring to me, and the fact that only 27% have been met. I mean, I know when you have diabetes or anything, it can be a very difficult thing to control, and you really need to have a plan. You need to have everything all set. I mean, that's what the chronic care, I would assume, would hit. So we received over $2,000 worth of fines for $50 each for people that did not meet within 7 days. I mean, 7 days is a long time to go without some kind of real chronic plan.
Well, again, I don't think these are statistics, and this is an overview and a snapshot. I don't think that you can glean from this particular
Oh, yeah.
document
You
that they
can,
weren't,
because the fines were paid.
that they weren't provided with medication. That's talking about seeing a chronic care specialist doctor, and I know it may sound like we're nitpicking, but they're really two different things. And I know some of the other legislators spoke to people at the jail. If you want a follow-up on that particular issue, we could certainly get it for you, but I don't
Well-
believe that the way the document is being interpreted is entirely accurate, not through any fault of yours, but the way the document is written. So I think the problem is the difference between a chronic care follow-up and the exam during admission.
I don't know any or all of the details of some of the situations we faced in the last year, but I know it did indicate that some of them were chronic conditions. And I mean, if we're only hitting 27% of the minimum requirement for chronic conditions, I think we're putting the county at risk, which is why I'm making a big point of this. If we ever come close to that number again, and I hope we get this more regularly, but I would hope that you guys would also, whoever comes in, this is so unacceptable. And I can tell you, as the mother who has a kid with a similar situation, I mean, you really have to, you are responsible for these people, and you need to be, at least meet with them within 7 days. I would say, I would move that up to within 24 hours with a chronic condition. I mean, one missed.
Again, I don't want to say it over and over, but they are seeing medical professionals at the time that they come in. It's not that they're not seeing anyone for 7 days.
Right, but it's not a chronic condition. Like, they don't, it's not, it seems like there needs a specific meeting with the chronic. Right. Oh, yeah, that was another issue that I was very concerned about also. Do you have any programs for your employees that would help deal with any kind of stress, dealing with, like, the suicides and things like that?
We have an employee assistant unit, and, correction officers can reach out to them, and they assist them. We don't always know exactly what the cases are, because they don't always brief us on it, but there is an avenue for that.
Is that provided by a separate group, or is it the same, like, armor?
No. You're talking about correction. I have a correction officer that oversees that unit, and if correction officers want to talk to them, alone, that's just. I thought you meant if they have employees want to talk to somebody. Nothing to do with armor.
Now, do you train your employees to recognize any kind of mental health issues with the
Yes.
units? How does that go? It goes in the normal training?
Yes.
And the supervisors also get the training?
Yes.
Is that, I just saw someone shake their head that,
It's probably Brian back there.
wait, there might be a discrepancy with whether or not that's actually.
Legislator DeRicci Whitten, are you okay? Are you finished? I just want, you know what?
Can I ask him?
I'm going to interject. These statistics that have come to us today, I think should be a guiding principle for the new healthcare provider coming to the facility. All right? And I'm going to tell you right now, some of these statistics are alarming, and one, of course, Legislator DeRicci Whitten, the one regarding chronic care is certainly very alarming. But this should be a footprint that could be used in trying to get the new provider to get on board and do a better job than was done. I think, don't you have a copy? Hold on, did you
With
get
the new
everybody get it?
provider, I mean, this is an eye-opener, and I'm guessing that this is going to be a benchmark that you're going to have to follow. How about, like, when the new provider comes in, within about 2 months or 3 months, we get a copy of the, how they're doing so far based on these statistics? Okay, I'm sorry.
Need to be aware of this, and they need to perform
Celia
a
just
lot
has
better.
something to say.
All right. I cut off Legislator DeRicci Whitten. I don't know. Okay, you ready for one more?
Sum it up. My daughter goes to a regular pediatrician, and then she has the endocrinologist, and there's completely different. The regular
That's what I'm saying,
pediatrician
it
thinks
should
she's
be.
great, and all that. And the endocrinologist can look at her every Wednesday. So the chronic care, it's not, you can't substitute it unless it's a real specific doctor that's trained in that type of chronic care. So I hope, like you said, like Denise Ford said, I hope we get at least a quarterly report now that I know that this is around. And thank you again, Laura, for getting.
Okay, so that's been, on both Legislator Ford and myself, I think that the new provider, hold on, this has to be a guide for the new provider.
It will.
And I think.
Take it under consideration.
Wait a minute, I'm going Legislator Bino, and then
Thank you.
Legislator.
Thank you.
Legislator Bino, and then Legislator Gaylor.
I would contest that this should not be the exact guiding principle, in that I believe that some of these indicators are faulty, that some of the indicators should be adjusted, or at least, let me go further, because I'm not a health professional. So let me go further. Let me go back to what I initially requested, which is that there be a committee put together that will look at the current indicators and benchmarks. And this committee should be comprised of medical professionals and also public health professionals, and that they should revisit this. And that should happen before we enter into a new contract. And then most certainly, after the professionals have determined what is appropriate, and it comes to this body and we vote on it, then yes, 2 to 3 months later, we should receive reports that would be reflective of what their performance is based on benchmarks. I don't think that this document, and I think that that was what Legislator Curran was making a point of, is in any way acceptable. We believe that there should be some adjustments on this, okay?
Yes.
Everything
All
can
right,
be improved.
and one of the other things that I wanted to just ask very quickly was whether telemedicine was actually being considered with this new provider, because I believe that that would be an effective way of reducing cost and also having, medical professionals at the hospital be able to engage.
It certainly was part of the presentations by the vendors. It's under consideration. Again, the contract hasn't been negotiated, but that's absolutely a consideration.
Legislator Gaylor, who's been very patient.
Sure. Mine's a budget question. Okay. Do you house federal prisoners or prisoners from out of county or out of state? And if you do, is there a mechanism to be reimbursed for the stay that they enjoy in Nassau County?
Yeah,
Thank you.
We've been housing federal inmates for about, I'd say 12, 14 years. We have a contract with the federal agencies. They pay us a daily rate. We're averaging about 30 over the last 4 years. About 2007, 8, 9, 10, we had over 100, but, nationally the numbers are down. So, we take whatever they give us, and they pay us by the day.
Is that the same with Suffolk County or New York City?
Suffolk County, I think they're entering into a contract now. They haven't been housing federal inmates for at least the last 10 years. I'm not sure if...
No, I mean, do we house any inmates that come from the city at their, at the city's request or Suffolk County's request in our facility?
Most of the time we do. It's only on a substitute jail order if it's a family member of a correction officer, or there's issues with maybe my staff or their staff. So we talk to the state, and I'd say I have about 15 inmates today between Rikers Island and Suffolk. So we it's not a lot of inmates, but we do move inmates around a little bit.
And do we get reimbursed for housing?
Not on a substitute jail order. If it's an issue with the state, if there's a reason why there's a conflict where an inmate cannot stay in my jail, then we'll send them to another jail.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Norma, can I just ask one follow-up on that?
Legislator?
I know that in the past we've held federal inmates.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Okay, on criminal cases, right? I'm over here.
Oh.
On federal.
I wasn't sure if it was the minority leader or you. Sorry. Come on.
If maybe you could just educate me a little bit. I know that in the past we used to hold them on federal criminal cases, and movement of the courts maybe changed some of the inmates there. But are there also opportunities to house ICE holds and other inmates related to other federal agencies, not necessarily related to criminal cases?
Immigration, we have immigration on the compound. There's been discussions over the years about doing it. We've never entered into a contract with them. So right now, we just house federal inmates. It's something that we could think about, we can consider, but we don't right now.
Because you do have, they're available wings and so forth that aren't being used. Is that correct? But of course, it would use additional staffing and otherwise, right?
Well, we'd have to add staff. But, I have housing space if that's the question. But basically, right now we house federal inmates and obviously our inmates.
Thank you.
I want clarification because I've been involved with the jail for a long time. Is there a period of time in which we can house the federal inmates, and after a certain period they need to be sent to a federal prison? In other words, after a certain, let's say one is in jail for a year and 6 months. Now, can that, and has committed a federal crime, does he remain or she remain in our facility?
He or she stays with us until the feds bring him out to sentencing, and then they would leave.
All right, and if that be the case, we receive compensation for housing them at the jail for that?
Yes, we get paid by the day.
Okay. Oh, let's go, Jew. Yes, Jew.
How are you, Sheriff?
How are you, sir?
I really do have one question, unless it spirals into something else. But, Colin, I heard you mention that the county is indemnified from any of the possible lawsuits, litigation that could come forward from anything that's occurred at the jail. As we all know, no, I'm not asking anything specific to any of the cases. What I'm asking is, I truly believe that any indemnification clause that we may have in an agreement is subject to be challenged. And I just wanted to find out your confidence on that clause in this agreement in terms of, is it ironclad in your opinion, or?
Well, I'm not sure what you would mean by challenge or the nature of the challenge, so it's hard to respond to that. It seems like a, sort of a wide open condition that you're putting on that.
Are there exceptions to the indemnification clause?
Yeah, I think, without you being more specific, I can't identify any on my own.
Well, I don't want to need to go into executive session, but I'm just trying to find out. You threw out the phrase that the county's indemnified. I'm trying to find out, is there anything that Armor could bring up that would jeopardize that indemnification on behalf of the county?
Well, I wouldn't want to speak for Armor. I could, I
Well,
wouldn't want to do that.
That's why I asked you if there's any exceptions. Is there anything that could be argued? I see Jerry's back there as well.
Yeah, I'll defer to Jerry if he wants to jump in.
In negotiating an indemnification clause in any contract, the idea is to make it ironclad so that the indemnifier is required to completely defend us as the indemnifiee. So I would be very, I was going to say surprised. I would be absolutely shocked if there was any way that the indemnification clause could be broken.
So Jerry, I guess, I understand what you said. In theory, that is the goal. And I'm concerned because the budgetary impact it could provide or hit the budget with this time next year, with everything that we're talking about, that's a tremendous impact to the budget. So I just want to make sure that I'm clear. Are there any exceptions that are in the contract or agreement?
Not that I know of, and as I said, I'd be shocked if there was any situation where the county would have any kind of liability for any of the action, for anything that was brought against Armor.
Okay.
It would have been set up that way so that there would not be possibility of the county being liable.
The new contract with the new provider must be ironclad in regard to indemnification.
It will.
Okay? Now I have Brian Sullivan, who's coming
Thank you.
before us. Thank you, Sheriff. Thank you to your staff. No, because he's not going to answer their question. Please, come on. All right, let's go. We want whatever their concerns on the record for us. Let's go. Brian Sullivan, President of Showa. What? No.
Am I up? Hot mic. I'm up. Thank you.
Introduce yourself, please.
Good afternoon.
Just for the record, I formally request that the sheriff stays for the questions.
Ay. Let's go.
Good afternoon,
Good
ladies and
afternoon,
gentlemen.
good evening, whatever the case.
Just let the record reflect that the sheriff has left the building.
Thank you very much.
Excuse me. Don't be wise.
I'm going.
Don't be wise.
If the
Brian, please introduce yourself to state who you
Legislator
are.
Gonzalez, I appreciate the time, and I'll just tell the clerk I timed my speech last night. It runs about 3.5 minutes, but I think after listening to a lot of things today, it might go about 4.5. So if you could bear with me. My name is Brian Sullivan. I am the president of the Nassau County Correctional Officers Benevolent Association, and after listening to the police commissioner's budget presentation and the sheriff's, I'm going to have to go home and take about a bucket full of blood pressure medication. So if you'll bear with me.
Full on armor.
I have no, I'm not going to go to armor, trust me. If you'll bear with me, I have a prepared statement. I hate reading prepared statements, but I usually try to make as much eye contact as possible, but I want to make sure that I have my story together here. Since my return to this union this past January, I have repeatedly stressed that my main goal is the safety, security, and good order of this facility, and doing my best to restore the morale morale and dignity to a completely demoralized workforce. I have been here on several occasions promoting that very concept and have reiterated this to the sheriff, the county executive, our local judges, and politicians. Most people understand what the phrase "the new normal" means. It refers to setting aside the normal ways of doing things and dealing with a new set of rules, either voluntarily or by having it thrust upon you. In my profession, there is a whole new different kind of new normal that has been thrust upon us over the last few years. In corrections, our new normal refers to a department that has been systematically decimated by budget cuts. Each year our baselines have been lowered with the theory that, okay, we did that last year, let's see what we can do without this year. Many of the cuts that took place here were over and above what we believe were called for in relation to the county's fiscal problems. Our sheriff has been touted by some as a great fiscal manager. I doubt you'll ever hear me describe him that way. I see him as a manager who measures his success by how much he can cut without the entire system imploding in on itself like a giant Jenga game. What many people don't realize is that at the end of each of those rounds of cuts over the last few years, over time, tried and true methods of managing a correctional facility fade away and newer lines are drawn in the sand as to what that new normal is. The mindset creates an ever-increasing position of working from a disadvantage. The inmates, our officers, and most importantly, the public safety at large is at that disadvantage. The new baseline that we are working from now, after years of draconian budget cuts, and the not-so-coincidental precipitous drop in the inmate head count by hundreds of inmates at this jail, has made this correctional facility almost unrecognizable to someone like me who has been here over 28 years. The place is a shell of its former self and, in my opinion, is not a safe facility. All this draconian budget cutting has, in my experience, resulted in the washing away of so much of what is needed to run a facility like this properly. For example, the lack of proper available response to emergencies, the lack of a fully staffed, trained, and equipped emergency response team. I have been talking with the county and the sheriff for months and months and months about implementing a full-time CERT team and getting our current call-up, for lack of a better word, off-duty emergency response team up to the levels that it's supposed to be at, which is over 80. And yes, our current CERT team is below 20. There's about 17 or 18. Those talks have been going on since the beginning of the year, and I have assurances that it's going to happen, but like I've said before here a couple of times, Christmas is coming too. The lack of proper and updated basic equipment to find and root out contraband in our facility. The lack of training. This is something I have been keying on since I got back into this position. Like was said earlier, it wasn't that long ago in the overall scheme of things, that the U.S. Department of Justice was in this facility after a particularly bad spell that we had years ago, and basically kicked this county in the rear end for how the jail was run. They mandated, not recommended, they mandated 5 days of training per year in a myriad of areas for all of our staff, along with other policies that they directed be implemented. Unfortunately, and the sheriff is correct on this, those mandates expired at the end of the DOJ's oversight period. Since then, slowly and methodically, that training, through systematic cuts, has eroded down to the basic minimum that the state currently requires. Minimum. It's like minimum staffing. This is what we have to provide you, and that's all we're going to provide you, which right now is approximately 14 to 16 hours a year. In the world we live in now, we all know about the myriad of law enforcement training that so many departments utilize to protect the public and run at peak efficiency. Training that teaches proper reactions to various scenarios. Training and equipment that many times can be paid for through government grant programs. None of which this department appears to be actively pursuing. We tag along on some police department grants, but as you can imagine, we pretty much get the scraps off that table at our end of the world. Here we are squeaking by with only the basic minimum mandates on training and dribbles of new equipment, and as you all know, the lack of proper training and equipment results in liability. Now that goes to when the commissioner of the police department was here, and I can't even put into words probably clearly how frustrated I am at hearing about a $50 million increase in the police budget. God bless them. I hope they get it. Those guys deserve it. They're out in the street. The current mindset in the world is anti-law enforcement. Believe me, I know all about that. They want training. They need the proper equipment. They need it. They need vehicles. They need tasers. They need everything that they're requesting. My point at being here is I want to know what our sheriff is requesting for our department, other than just resubmitting the same budget every year and coming in under that budget any year and never reinvesting any dividends he may receive from coming in under budget into the infrastructure, training, or equipment of the jail. New tasers for the police department. Helicopters. We're buying new helicopters. God bless them. With microwaves and going out to the canyons. New precincts we're building. New field the teams of field training officers. 6-man tactical teams. I love it. They deserve it. They should have it. So should we. The Rook. I love that thing, that tank that they're driving around in. They have the Rook. We have the Pawns. I'll put it to you that way. Armored vehicles designed for safety and security. That's the words that I keep talking about here, safety and security. They've implemented a uniform system to systematically replace their uniforms. It took several years to get our uniform changed here. I don't particularly care for the uniforms myself because I'm partial to the gray. We were always labeled as the guys in gray. Now everybody's in black uniforms. Us, the deputies, the maintenance guys, the cooks, you can't tell us apart. Domain alert awareness. I love all of these programs. 23 new ambulances, an entire new fleet of ambulances, an entire new fleet of RMPs, an entire new fleet of undercover cars. I hope they get it. 6 new canine cars, new SUVs, 24 patrol cars with rifles, upgraded body armor for everybody. We have vests that we got here, the sheriff talked about. We have 130 vests, I believe, we got in the past year. We have to do a little bit better on the math because I have about 860 correction officers here, guys that go off of lineups and work transportation and work different areas outside the facility. The commissioner also spoke, focusing energy on training cops. Records management system. This is the most dangerous times we've lived in since 9/11. It's the major concern of all law enforcement in this country. And we need to provide training and equipment to protect our law enforcement officers. Direct assaults on law enforcement officers. I don't know if anybody saw out in California in Fresno, a visitor, for lack of a better word, walked into the visiting room of the Fresno County Sheriff's Department and opened fire, killing correction officers in the visiting room. We don't have the proper staffing or equipment, vests, for guys that work in our visiting room. The gatehouses, perimeter security is constantly being tinkered with. We're going to change this to that. We're going to change that to this. Something happened with one of our gatehouses and they had to move it. I understand that. But let's reduce this and put it over there. It's all this constant nickel and diming that doesn't provide the proper level of security in our facility. If you'll forgive me 1 second, let me just get back to my place. Next, this department's continued consolidation plan, where inmates are all squeezed into as few housing areas as possible, continues to create artificial overcrowding in our facility, while floors and dormitories continue to remain closed. This results in the commingling of rival gangs that we just spoke about before, the commingling of adults and minors in one particular housing area, which is never good correctional sense, no matter what anybody says. I don't care if they're under special housing as protective custody. You shouldn't be mixing adults and minors in the same housing area. The lack of available space to properly separate problem inmates, resulting in increased tensions and violence in the housing areas, jeopardizing everyone's safety, inmates and officers alike. Earlier this year, we had a series of gang-related inmate slashings, as well as was discussed before, dealing with an increase in officer injuries this year. It would be one thing if this consolidation plan came, with a plan to combat possible scenarios that could arise. But over the last few years in budgets, that plan seems to not only diminish training, but also eliminate or phase out proper tactical responses, and much like the Commissioner spoke about before, details of which I'm not going to explain in a public forum for security reasons. But we all know, I hope, what tactical responses are, tactical teams, etc. In favor of just cutting everything and hoping for the best. I am routinely fighting the sheriff on staffing issues inside and outside the facility, on the reduction of vital ancillary staff that also act as our response in emergencies, and particularly reductions in our investigative units that should be investigating and prosecuting inmate crimes in the facility, but are more often redeployed on a constant basis to perform security functions to attempt to save money. We also continue to press on the purchase of vehicles. We did get several vehicles this year, which were hounded by my predecessors, and probably goes back to when I was here last time. We got about 10 new vehicles, but several more vehicles are needed to perform the basic functions in our facility. Outfitting our staff in the proper uniforms. We already beat that to death. Most importantly, providing stab-proof and bulletproof vests for our guys. Like I said, we had the 140 came in. There's 850 people working here. A lot of them get it. Several of them are being put outside. They don't get it, or they get put in. If we happen to have some laying around, we'll give it to you. It's unacceptable. It's unacceptable to me. Chuck Schumer came out with a thing last week. It was in the paper that they had a whole federal grant program that provided thousands of armor vests for police and law enforcement on Long Island. Villages got it, public safety got it. Nassau County didn't need so much because they had their own program. Suffolk County was given 500 vests, and we're standing there looking with, all right, where's ours? There's no input about any of this. There's no grants, there's no money. It's, I don't know. Forgive me 1 second. It is true that the new vests, police department grants, but I have to point out this department is 800 men. You should remember, I hope you would remember, a couple of months ago, I led a large demonstration at the jail bringing light to many of these problems. A few of the issues I raised, including the lack of regular and proper facility-wide searches, particularly after an armor medical nurse was arrested for bringing in drugs and weapons to inmates. Isn't that special? I also pointed to the lack of contraband detecting equipment like the boss chairs, which are body cavity search tools, if you don't know what they are, without getting too graphic. Metal detectors, hand wands, or the implementation of a proper updated search policy for this jail for everyone who enters our facility, including my members. There's routine checks of cars and trucks that come in. They just basically look and make sure there's no inmates in there when they leave, but there is not a system in place to check for vendors and anybody bringing contraband into the facility. We know that we have to look at vehicles to make sure inmates aren't in them when they're leaving. That's basically where we are now. What we're not looking for is contraband coming into the facility. Staffing, we have had enormous amounts of retirements in the past few years. Our officer headcount is down to the lowest in decades for a facility of this size. I've spoken to the sheriff and the county executive on implementing a recruiting process to hire qualified people for this job. This topic needs serious attention. Otherwise, soon we're going to be facing serious staff problems, not only in our ancillary units, but on the job in general. We need to get out there and recruit correction officers. With regard to armor, what else can be said as far as that company is concerned? Don't let the door hit you in the rear end on the way out. That's all I have to say. For decades, this jail medical unit ran smoothly with locally hired union medical personnel who performed in a caring and exemplary manner. The move to save money and give this function to a private, for-profit vendor with no ties to the community has proven to be a major problem, as we all know. I point to the recent decision by the federal government to stop using for-profit private prison concerns to provide custody and medical care to federal inmates. They stopped doing that. The practice of using private vendors on a for-profit basis in corrections almost always results in poor care, poor performance, and huge liabilities for the taxpayers. As for this new company, if the county is once again going to use a private concern, Correct Care Solutions, I believe is their name, this county needs to take great pains to ensure that the problems we experience with Armor are not relived with this new private concern coming in. In closing, the pendulum has swung far enough in the wrong direction. Enough is enough. Many tens of millions of dollars in cuts at this jail have been done. Enough is enough. We need to start rebuilding this major metropolitan correctional facility in a thoughtful and deliberate manner to make it efficient, make it compliant, and most of all, make it a facility that is safe, secure, and in good order for the taxpayers of Nassau County. Thank you for your time. I'll take any questions anybody has.
I actually don't have a question, but I would just request that you would provide your comments,
Yes.
because you listed a whole number of things, and we would like to follow up on those things. So if you could provide the email that to both sides, would be
I'll take care of that. If there's a copy machine right here, I'll make copies. I'll give them to you before I
Okay.
leave.
Thank you.
Okay, hold on. Legislator Schaefer.
Hi, Brian. How are you?
Good afternoon.
I have a question regarding the vests you were talking about.
Right.
You say you have approximately 800 employees, and there were about 130 vests that came through to you.
They were identified before I came back into office last year about people that normally work outside, normally work transportation, normally work gatehouses, but it didn't take into account that, especially now since the overtime is up, there are a lot of guys off lineup, off a roll call, going out, working transportation, working outside, that were never given these vests.
Okay.
Before I came back in, I used to work over in transportation. I was a supervisor over there, and I would routinely see these new guys, a year or two or three, coming on the job, showing up on the buses in Hempstead District Court with no vests on.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to take care of that right away.
Okay. And is it mandated that they're wearing vests in certain areas or certain job descriptions?
There are orders that they
correctional
should have them outside. We just dealt with some orders that were out recently about the proper way to wear them.
Okay. So always outside. And what about inside? I know we were talking about that briefly.
Inside there was, I'm sorry, finish your question.
No, because I'm just thinking you were talking about the incident in Fresno, but there aren't supposed to, and that was in a waiting room?
It was in the visiting room. When the public walks in,
okay.
to
And
visit
are there not guns allowed in the visiting room?
There's no guns allowed in the visiting room,
right,
because the inmates come in there. But in the areas in the front, there are armed posts.
Okay.
But the issue is the vests.
Right.
To make sure everybody that works in those areas, when the public walks in, they walk into the front, the windows when they come in to visit somebody, and they start doing their transaction, whether they're bringing money in or finding out which building their visitor is in.
Mm-hmm.
Before they ever go through metal detectors, they're face-to-face with our officers.
Okay. And those officers should be wearing vests, obviously?
Without a doubt.
Okay. Are they wearing them typically, or some are, some
many
are
of
not?
them have them, some don't have them. They put them in the areas back inside the facility. They'll swap them around if somebody doesn't have one.
Okay. Do you know how many it would take to have everybody, I mean, if you don't need for all 800, or if all 800 aren't required, how many would you need to have so that everybody that should be wearing a vest is wearing one?
That's a hard thing to quantify because it all depends on who the person is that's going out. I've had conversations with the county about providing everybody on our job with a vest.
Right.
I believe that there is money there, and I'm going to keep pressing that, and I would hope, ask for your help on your end to push that, to provide the vest for our guys.
Okay.
There are two different kinds. There's bulletproof vests, bullet-resistant vests, and there are stab-proof vests. Especially now, since we've had, all this problems with the slashings and the things you see in Rikers Island, we get the same inmates back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to get our staff, particularly the ones that work in the housing units, outfitted in these. It's light-fitting stab vests. It's puncture-proof.
Okay.
Brian, would you do me a favor? I would like to make a copy of your comments. Because Conlon Daniel is still here. I want the sheriff to have these, and I want him to have it as well. And maybe I don't know, I hate to put you on the spot, Conlon, but there's some of the issues that he raised are of concern to this body. And it would be hard-pressed for us to address them all here tonight. But I think it's important that you get a copy of this. Conley, come on up. I hate to put you on the spot, I really do, but the sheriff's not here, but this is extremely important that we get a copy of this presentation by Brian, and I don't know if there's anything in there that you want to address to this body, but I think the sheriff needs to address some of the issues that were raised in Brian's presentation.
We will certainly get a copy to the sheriff.
All right, and I don't know who's doing that now, but is anybody doing that now? I want to get it to him
We
now.
will. As soon as we get a copy, we'll get a copy to the sheriff.
Absolutely, because there are some issues here that can be addressed in the sheriff's budget without blowing it out of the water. But I think that I wish we had heard these issues before today. I think we could have easily asked the questions of the sheriff while he was here. And in light of the fact that you are still here, Conlon, then we can get you a copy to give to the sheriff, and of course we want a copy of it as well. Okay? We got it? Who has the? Wait a minute. I just spoke, and I know there were others who spoke as well, and Dennis Dunn, since the jail is now in his district,
I guess I'm
in my
done.
community.
I'm going to ask the members of Sully, if you come back to the mic too, I'm going to ask the members of the Public Safety Committee to come with me to sit with the sheriff and go over some of these problems that are there. And I can't believe that there's a possibility that the vendors may be bringing in contraband with how lucrative the sale of drugs are. And I understand that it is happening in the jail. People are getting stuff into the jail, contraband. And
That's not a new story. That's been going on for years, where they talked about things coming in through some of the...
And you have an open door policy with the vendors coming in.
Comes and goes. That goes back to gangster movies from the 30s about bringing things in laundry trucks and delivery trucks.
We'd like to, we're going to meet with the commission. I invite members of the Public Safety Committee to come with me if they're available. If not, then we're going to meet with them. We're going to go over this. Thank you for providing that list.
I would love to be at that meeting if you know, it's up to you. You want to invite me, I'd love to be there.
You know what? We have to have our legal counsel decide what the do's and don'ts of the, but we will, if we can, I'd love to have you there, if we can.
I get it. I know the process.
No, well, I just want to make sure I don't speak out of class.
No, I get it.
All right, so, but this is really disturbing, some of the things you've said, and I think everybody up here has been, the hair standing on edge now, saying, what? Oh, my God. So we'll check it out, and trust me, thank you so much for bringing it to our attention.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Wait a minute. Legislator Ford has something to say, and somebody else did? Okay, Legislator Ford.
Thank you very much, and I really wish that you were able to speak directly after Sheriff Sposato's testimony here, because I think it would have been easier to ask him right here with all of us present. But if I can't make the meeting with Dennis Dunn, I will be more than happy to go with you through the jail. So, because I'm very interested in when you talked about the closure of some of the areas in the jail, and that this has now forced, the commingling of various gang members, and I know that there's a large number of various gangs.
We got a
that are
big
now
gang presence in the jail.
living, yeah, and as you know, I have people I know who work there, so
Sure.
I am aware of this danger. How much of the jail has been shut down, though? What areas have been closed?
The biggest area where the inmates are, for lack of a better word, squeezed in the most is in the 832 building. The 832 building it was built for 832 inmates, and where are they? They're double bunking in the program dorm.
832 is the new building.
It's the newest building, right? It was built in '93. In the program dorms where there's supposed to be just programs, we have inmates in there that are just solely being housed. We have gang members that are in there. That's another problem about how the rehabilitation programs in the jail have been diminished.
Building D was just for women.
D building is just for women except for the second floor right now. The second floor has the clinic in it, which has a lot of our injured inmates. It also has the BMU, the Behavioral Modification Unit, which actually reminds me, last night one of our officers had a cup of urine thrown in his face on the BMU. Guy with 2 years on the job, it all got in his eyes, his mouth, everything else. That's a great thing to do.
Okay.
I don't normally go to work.
All right. You
thinking
gave-
that's going to be done to me,
Did you
but
give the report to
yes,
whomever?
yes.
All right, and that report has got your presentation, it's got to be given to us as well?
Right.
I don't know, did,
It's one of the aides in the back, I believe, is making 19 copies for everybody.
she's making 19 copies, she's generous. But one more
Send me
question, and
the
then we
bill
go.
for the pages.
No, I'm not finished.
Oh, geez.
Sorry.
I know the county's broke,
I'm over here.
except
I'm sorry.
for helicopters.
Everybody's asking you a lot of questions. They're getting your attention. But you were saying 832 normally will was built to house
Built to hold
800.
832. It's a little bit higher than that because there's double bunking in one of the dorms. What do you think? There's 5 in each of that GH2. There's probably another 20 inmates on on top of the 832.
And what was it?
52 to 60 in each dorm.
I'm not going to, you know what, I know, there's a lot going on here, but I think probably it would be best to take a tour of the building with you, and so I
I'm
can
all
see
for
the areas that are closed.
Right.
I know the first time I did visit the jail was at the behest of the union, yeah.
To be clear, I'm sorry to interrupt you. It was spoken about here last year. B building is where we normally hold our worst inmates in the linear tiers because it's a lot more controlled. Yeah. There's 4 floors in B building, B2, B3, B4, B5. B4 and B5 are closed right now. It was opened briefly at the end of last year, and it was a project that was doomed to fail last year. Yeah. It was a pilot project that didn't work. They put the worst of the worst all on one floor instead of trying to spread out the mess, and it was doomed to fail so we could cut it. The old satellite, it's open dormitories. They're built for 44 inmates apiece. There's 350-something, I think, inmates it could hold in the back. That's all closed. All of that, the majority of that, aside from B4 and B...
I know the complex by the building numbers or letters.
Right.
Now, the old complex was which? B?
The oldest complex there is A building.
I know, okay.
A building
But it's not being
A building is
utilized, right?
closed. It's been closed because there's no fire suppression
Right.
system since it closed.
Right.
B building is still open, just B2 and B3.
Yeah.
B4 and B5 are closed.
And how many are housed there?
20, 40, 60, 80, 160 in B building. It could hold twice that many. And then there's dormitories downstairs that are open. The old satellite is closed, 6 dorms, but the majority of the reasons for those closures, which I also believe B4 and B5 should be open because of the way it controls problem inmates, the majority of why that back satellite's closed with 350 inmates down is because our inmate head count has dropped so precipitously. And it's a budget hearing. I know a lot of people don't want to talk about it, but I have my suspicions about why our inmate head count has dropped so precipitously, but we'll leave that for another venue. Right. There have also been post cuts in the jail over and above, and there have been almost 90 post cuts in the last 4 or 5 years. There's been cuts in transportation, cuts in medical, cuts in visiting. The housing areas themselves, there has not been cuts because you have to have, you have 4 guys to 104 inmates. If you cut that, at the very least, I'll be out here demonstrating again, for lack of a better word.
You'll put the officers in severe danger.
You'll put everybody in severe danger if anything was to done that. The response is down. Response to emergencies is down. Available people that can respond because these other units have had post cuts in them. You used to be able to have 15, 20 more people arrive at a scene of a problem. Now you're lucky if you get 6 to 8 people show up. And especially when you have dormitories that are housing rival gangs together, it's not a good scenario.
Exactly.
And my main point, like I said here earlier, is we have the police commissioner requesting $50 million increase because of everything that we need. But what is our sheriff requesting because of everything we need? It's last year's budget photocopied and put back in again.
I'll be in touch. My last comment is I'm hoping that all of the officers have body alarms, but I'll let it go to the next question.
Oh, there's no body alarms. When I was here last time, we talked about body alarms. $400,000 was allocated for a body alarm system. That all went by the wayside while I was gone. There's a radio system and phones. The phones are 1 million years old. The phones go down periodically. The radio system has the handheld radios that you walk around, and there's a radio alarm system. It's got a red button on the top. The radios go down several times a week. And there's dead spots all over the jail.
Down, he can't activate.
Oh, there's no man-down feature anywhere. That's never been implemented here. You and I worked closely with that when I was here last time. That whole thing.
We're going to work closely again on it.
We're going to work closely again on it because with the fiscal crisis, everything else, it got scrapped.
He said he's $4 million under budget right now, so he has money right now in the budget to buy some of this stuff. But thank you.
Hear, hear.
As long as you smile, fine. Legislator Sullivan.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. Thank you, Brian, for being here at this late hour. Were there any misrepresentations made by the sheriff in his presentation? Because I hear what you're saying. You're saying that some of these posts have not been tweaked or changed or displaced or replaced, but he's saying that everything is the same, everything is fine. Were there any misrepresentations made by the sheriff?
To put it delicately, some things weren't correct. As far as the post cuts, as far as mental health training, there is no mental health training provided. Right. The mental health training used to be provided here and in service every year. That's not provided anymore. That's been cut. There was, the sheriff said that, maybe he doesn't have the numbers at his fingertips, but he said there was about 35 people on the CERT team. There's not. There's about half of that. So,
I asked the sheriff to stay. Can we get his sheriff or his wife or anyone to testify here? I mean, no, but come on, she works for him. Come on.
That's enough. That's enough.
No, it's not enough. Please, you're not going to tell me that's enough, okay? I have a right to ask questions as a diligent investigator here. There were misrepresentations made by the sheriff. I've asked the presiding officer to swear witnesses in so that they can't get up here and lie, but you don't do that. So now I'm asking a question, and he's not even here to defend himself.
If you're going to start going after people's families, then all of us are exposed to the same thing, Mr. Solage.
Please don't do that.
What do you mean by that, Mr. Nicolello?
I mean that people that live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. I'm not talking about your family. I'm talking about all of us.
My family does not before here asking for a contract. Well, why don't you order her asking for a contract? Hey, please, do not address me. Do not address me. Are you kidding? Do not address me.
Her position.
I take questions from people who are not legal. Do not address me.
Hold on.
Do not address me, Mackenzie, okay? Because you're asking questions about everything right now. So don't you dare address me.
Listen.
Don't you dare. You seem to be obsessed with that husband, so don't you dare ask me what should I be asking questions about, okay? Please. I'll take it from him, but not from you. Not from you.
But listen.
I don't know who you think you are, but...
I'm a Nassau County legislator elected by a great district because he's asking inappropriate questions.
Listen.
Talking about inappropriate questions, going after people's wives.
I'm not going after her. She works for him, and she can't even tell the truth.
Listen, that's enough. Enough. Thank you, Brian.
Anybody have any more questions for me?
Thank you. We all have copies of your presentation, and we're going to leave it at that.
I got a lot more I could talk about.
And I think we'll proceed from there. Right now, I say thank you.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate the
remember
attention.
Something. I'm sure that the minority as well as the majority, you know, if there were concerns, you could have addressed them sooner to us.
I've been around. Some of these are old, and I've addressed some of these things since I've been back.
These are old.
Some of them are old, and some of them I've been here, and I've addressed some of these
recently. Listen to me, Brian.
A lot of this shouldn't be news to anybody.
Listen to me.
Right.
One thing I've always felt it was important, not only to you in that jail, all right, to the correction officers and even the inmates for that matter, anybody in that facility, if it's not secure, if our correction officers are not really comfortable with what the conditions are, that means that facility, that we're not going to be.
Right.
And we always say, the security of that facility impacts on the security of my community.
Without a doubt.
Okay? And I think I said that to the sheriff.
Yes.
All right? And I honestly feel that for so many years dealing with the jail, and I've been dealing with the jail since 1989, when they were trying to expand it to that 832 building.
Right.
And I'll never forget. They were going to go right to the corner of Common Avenue and Salisbury Park Drive. That would have been a major mistake because we're not able to house the number of inmates that facility was built for. What would happen then if we had gone out to Salisbury Park Drive? But if that facility is, for some reason or another, not secure for you who work in that facility, then we are intimidated by it because we feel that we're not going to be
That's
secure.
why we're at the public safety budget hearing.
All right, and so that's it. Public safety is extremely important.
Paramount.
To not just to me as a legislator, but as a resident of the East Meadow community. And so, and the fact that we have a high school right across the street, and we have a hospital right next door, and we have senior citizens right across the street.
Right. We have.
We have it all.
Little kids on the ball fields right
okay?
next door.
And the ball fields. We have it all. So the security of that facility is paramount to the security of the community. And so I thank you for sharing your comments with us tonight. Hopefully the sheriff will get them, and Conlon said he will get them to him.
And they don't fall on deaf
And I
ears.
think, and listen, and stop attacking one another on this body. We're not here to attack, okay? We're here to try to come up with solutions. And we have plenty of time to come up with solutions before we vote on the budget on October 31st.
Thank you for
Okay?
your time, folks.
Thank you, thank you.
Have a good
thank
rest of your night.
Yes, now I'm going